We're here to idea you, to fire up your curiosity and connect you with the people and ideas that shape our world. Watch, listen, understand, connect, and create. Let's move the human story forward together.
Hello and welcome to The Poetry of Science, a podcast which provides insight into new scientific research via the medium of poetry. I'm your host, Dr. Sam Illingworth, and each week I'll be introducing you to some of the latest scientific findings and sharing a selection of science-themed poetry. After all, we could all do with a little bit more poetry in our lives. In this episode, I'll be exploring new research which has found that ocean acidification in the Mediterranean is already affecting the calcification of marine plankton. Carbon's ghost falls as tears into the salty swell, dark residues of industry, profit, greed. Acid eats at skeletons submerged, dissolving homes and webs and lives. Once firm shells, now frail as whispers, lament in lairs beneath the caustic waves. We stain the sea with inky lies. Limestone reefs erode in bitter tides. This poem is inspired by recent research published in the journal Communications, Earth and Environment, which has investigated how increased carbon emissions are acidifying oceans, weakening the shells of plankton and marine life, and threatening ecosystems. The increasing levels of carbon dioxide emissions from human activities such as the burning of fossil fuels are not only warming our planet, but also causing a significant change in our oceans, known as ocean acidification. This process begins when the excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere dissolves into seawater, forming carbonic acid. This acid then lowers the ocean's pH, making the water more acidic. This shift in pH can have harmful effects on marine life, particularly on species that rely on calcium carbonate to build their shells and skeletons. The long-term consequences of ocean acidification, especially over decades to centuries, are complex and not fully understood, making it a critical area of environmental research. To better understand these impacts, the researchers studied 3 sediment cores from the Mediterranean Sea, which contain records spanning several centuries. They specifically looked at the weight, chemical composition, and other aspects of the shells of planktic Formophania. The findings were concerning. As the levels of human-made carbon dioxide increased, these creatures' shells became lighter, indicating weaker calcification. This is likely due to the increasing acidity of the ocean and the presence of carbon from fossil fuels. The study suggests that if carbon dioxide levels continue to rise, these tiny but vital sea creatures in the Mediterranean Sea will face increasing difficulties in building their shells, which could have broader implications for the marine ecosystem. Now that you've heard the science, let me read the poem to you again. Carbon's ghost falls as tears into the salty swell, dark residues of industry, profit, greed. Acid eats at skeletons submerged, dissolving homes and webs and lives. Once firm shells, now frail as whispers, lament in lairs beneath the caustic waves. We stain the sea with inky lies. Limestone reefs erode in bitter tides. In this section of the podcast, I'd like to share a poem written by another poet on a topic related to the science that has been discussed so far. In this episode, I'll be reading Ocean Which I Pushed Up by Joshua Beckman. Joshua Beckman is an American poet and author who was born in New Haven, Connecticut in 1971. He's the author of 8 collections of poetry, including The Inside of an Apple, which was a finalist for the Los Angeles Times Book Award, Take It, Shake, and Things Are Happening, which won the first annual Honkmin APR Book Award. In 2008, Beckman co-edited State of the Union, 50 Political Poems, an anthology of political poems with Matthew Zapruder. He has also translated poems by Carlos Oquendo de Amat and Thomas Salomon. Ocean Which I Pushed Up by Joshua Beckman. Ocean which I pushed up with my fingers so I could touch the orange sands below, and white mountain which is not white, but for getting caught in the cold. Stay here where it is warm, and where the sun shines, for later celestial garlands of dead light will draw you into the cold, for sure. Thank you for listening to the Poetry of Science.
Thank you very much for being with us for this episode of the ideaXme Show. ideaXme is a global platform. Our mission is to move the human story forward by sharing knowledge of the future. You can find us on all major audio networks at www.radioideaXme.com, on YouTube and Vimeo. Please subscribe.